Hey guys, welcome back to Tethan Props. Today I'm going to be doing this really cool lightsaber based off the artwork from Jake Bartok that you can see there. So it's Aragorn's lightsaber undual with exploded center with the kyber crystal showing and a lot of battle damage, so it looks really cool. So I've got a similar lightsaber that I've been working on recently, which is kind of the complete version of this. So I'm essentially going to take the same design and rework it. So I've just had to print a few extra pieces there. So those are the central kyber crystal chamber parts. So just like with every bit of 3D printing, take it off, clean it in isopropyl alcohol and make sure they're fully cured before you start working on them. So these are all the 3D printer parts. I've got all the regular ones plus these extra ones that I'm using for the kyber crystal chamber. So I want to now add the battle damage before I start doing any painting or anything like that. So taking the Sharpie, using the photo as reference, I'm just going to go and add out all the battle damage. So I'm going to go in and put into all the pieces. So to do the battle damage, I'm using a couple different methods. I use drills, saws, and here I'm using my Dremel to take off some more cracks and things like that. So for the larger things, just cut them off with a saw, but for the smaller details, use a Dremel. It works really well. So for the kyber crystal chamber opening, the artwork has a lightsaber split completely in half, but I wanted to have this as one single piece. So what I've done is kind of modified it a little bit, and I'm going to be taking a chunk out of the middle where the buttons are. This one won't have full lightsaber electronics like the normal lightsaber, so I don't need those buttonholes there, but it's a good spot. It lines up with the photo, so it's a really good spot to take out a chunk and then sand it down, make it look like it's broken. Again, using different forms. I think I cut it out with a saw to start with, then go back with the Dremel and refine all the battle damage. So now that I've got all the damage done to the parts, it's time to start gluing some of the main pieces together. So I've added on the emitters and the lightsaber guards there. The next part is to figure out the kyber crystal chamber. So I've got some kyber crystals that I've got in my collection, and this one's yellow, which means I'm not going to use it because I want a green one, but it's a really good shape, so I'm going to actually make a mold and cast my own version. So the first thing to do when making a mold is to obviously glue the kyber crystal down, make a little frame around or a support structure, and then it's time to start with the silicon. So pour out as much silicon as you think you need, add the catalyst, mix it around, and then pour it into the mold. So it takes about 24 hours for this to fully set, and once it is, you can then go ahead and cut out your kyber crystal. So what I'm doing here is putting a little jagged edge around it so that when you go to put it back together, it's kind of got lines that it can match up, and it means that the mold goes back together the way it should. Always recommend that. So the next thing is to now pour a kyber crystal. So I've got a couple things there. I've got my scales, my pipettes, mixing items, and also obviously the molds. So I'm going to be using this crystal 2-part epoxy resin. So this is a 2-to-1 ratio, so that's why it's really important to use a scale so you get the proportions correct, because if you don't get them correct, it doesn't set properly and you just destroy your mold. So pouring out the 2 parts of the epoxy, you then add in your colors, mix it together until you get the color that you're after. So once you've got the color that you're after, it's time to put it into the mold. So this is where it's really good idea to use a pipette, because it's hard to pour it in there and get rid of all the air bubbles. So definitely recommend a pipette for something like a kyber crystal. Put that one away, let it set for at least 3 to 4 days. The longer the better, because resin can take a really long time. So the next thing to do is to start putting it together. I'm going to have electronics in this one, so I need a little bit of a support structure in there. So I'm just gluing some PVC pipe into the end, and that is what my electronics will slide up into, and it's what I can use as the base for the kyber crystal chamber to sit on. So once it's glued in place, it's time to start painting. I've decided to paint the kyber crystal chamber as well as the lightsaber separately. I went over with a grey primer, gloss black, and then a bit of aluminium on top of that. Now I'm adding in some details with some Tamiya gold and chrome silver. And this is just going over and painting over the areas that need to be slightly more silver than the rest, or areas that need to be gold. So once you've done all the highlight painting, it's time to then go in and add a wash in. So I take watered down black paint and cover it over the whole thing, and then go and rub off any excess. And that just leaves paint in all the cracks and crevices and really adds some depth. After you've done that, it's time to start on the highlights. So you take your chrome silver and go along on all the edges that would be naturally scratched or some wear and tear, and it adds that extra layer of depth and makes it look like real metal and gives it a nice shine. So go do that over the whole lightsaber, and that's painting pretty much done. The next thing to do is to work on the electronics. So I'm just using the same Arlec 200 lumen USB torch. So I buy them from Bunnings, a local hardware store here in Australia. You can find a similar thing. So pulling it apart and adding in my green filters, because obviously I want a green light on this to shine on this kyber crystal, and this is the same technique that I use in other lightsaber builds. So check out other videos if you want to see in more depth. So once you slide in the electronics up into that PVC core that we put in earlier, that's pretty much done. You just need to add a little bit of detail around the kyber crystal chamber, like some wires hanging out that are obviously been broken by the explosion, and yeah, it looks really cool when you add that little bit extra detail into the kyber crystal chamber. So that's pretty much done. We've got our two parts. We've got the main handle that again is one piece because I chose to not cut it completely in half. We've got lights in the kyber crystal chamber there, adds a little bit of extra detail onto it, and we've also got the other little off-cut bit of the cross guard there. So really good addition, and I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you on the next one, and make sure to like and subscribe the video. Check out my other ones. I've got plenty of other cool lightsaber builds out there, so check them out. Alright, I'll see you guys on the next one.